to the Talent Optimization Podcast, the go-to podcast for CEOs and HR professionals wanting to bridge the gap between the strategy and tactical implementation of talent optimization within their organizations. Through interviews, predictive index, and personal experience, your host, Traci Shirk, helps you discover the facets of talent optimization from both a CEO and HR perspective to truly create the dream team for your organization. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Do you really understand what your employees need? It's a key question that comes up over and over and over again. Welcome to the Talent Optimization Podcast. My name is Traci Shirk, and we are podcast number 79. And today we are chatting about how do we diagnose what's really happening inside of our organizations and what our staff need. And one of the keys that I love about Diagnose is when we understand what our folks need inside of our organization, we can up-level and we can celebrate those successes. So how do you know if something's working or not? It's simple. Ask the questions, right? Now, how we ask questions has a very, very important impact on the results that we get, because how we ask questions is going to tell the employee or customer, right? There's lots of different ways to diagnose things, whether it's in communities, whether it's your customers, whether it's your employees. But the questions we ask give a sense to our employees what it is that is important to us, right? So what we ask and how we ask the question will drive some of those changes. So for example, there was a study done on specifically health, right? And the organization asked very specific questions on, mental health and physical health. Well, what happened is they then went and watched the number of individuals that joined their EAP program or took part in their health tracking, and it actually increased after the questions were asked. So the data shows that the questions we ask will impact individuals' behavior. So as we start to talk about Diagnose this month on the podcast, I really want you to think about what questions you ask and how that impacts the results that individuals and the actions that individuals are taking. So here's something that came out of the Workforce Institute, which is through UKG. And so what the Workforce Institute asked is they were really looking at why individuals were leaving organizations and what were the reasons. So they asked two different groups of people, right? So they asked individuals that left organizations, why are you leaving? And then they went and they asked managers, why are you leaving? And what we know is we are, I believe it's 33% up over last year of individuals that are leaving the organization. So number of quits, right? That's a significant number. So we're still in the middle of this great resignation or great swap or whatever you want to call it. But we're also seeing individuals boomeranging. We're seeing individuals coming back to organizations saying, I should have never left. The grass was not greener on the other side. I should have stayed there, right? But what we find really, really interesting from this study, and what I want to focus on here, is why individuals stated they left and why managers thought they left, right? So reason number one for both managers and employees was they left because of more money, better compensation and benefits at another organization. And we've definitely seen this over the last 2 years. And, as a side note here, if you are paying more for individuals coming into your organization, please take a really close look at the folks that have stuck it out and have been loyal to you. Ensure that you're increasing them to at least that level, even if it's with bonuses or something else, because that's something that's incredibly important. So number one reason people are leaving, money, right? But number 2 and 3 are really interesting. So managers thought that people were leaving. Number 2 was for personal family reasons, childcare. And number 3 for managers was too many COVID precautions. So that's what the managers thought in the survey. Yet when UKG and the Workforce Institute asked employees why they left, the number 2 reason is that they did not feel valued or feel that they belonged in the workplace. And the number 3 reason was employees felt that they had poor work-life balance and had a tremendous amount of burnout. When we think about the distinction here, so managers think that they're leaving because of personal family reasons, or because of too many COVID precautions, yet employees are stating that they're leaving because they don't feel valued and they don't feel like they belong at the organization and they're burnt out, right? Those are two distinctly different items. If we don't ask the question to our staff, what's going well or what's not going well, we're going to solve for things that are not important. And that's why Diagnose and doing surveys with our staff is so incredibly important. When we understand why people are leaving or why they're staying, we can address those things and we can talk about them and be transparent with them. And that is what we're going to talk about today. So, we want to look at the employee life cycle and say, where are some key areas that we can focus on, asking some questions. So a couple things that we can do. One, we love to ask folks when they come into the organization, what is it that you're looking forward to? What are your goals for the first 30, 60, 90 days, the first year and 5 year? We want to really understand what is important to that employee. Why do they feel like they are the perfect person for this job? And here's the thing. We love to get this stuff in writing, not as a gotcha, but so that we can share this with our managers and leaders, because then they can use that so that they know how to lead individuals in a way that's meaningful to them. If you have not yet listened to, I think it's podcast number 74, where we talk about how do we design our teams. We talk a lot within that podcast about ensuring things are important and meaningful to the individual and that they're aligned to what the job needs and the organization needs. So when we ask questions up front before they even come into the organization, we can then track that back after they've been with the organization for 30, 60, 90 days. And that gives us our next area to diagnose, right? So when an individual comes into the organization within the first 30, 60, 90 days, doing some surveys there to say, hey, how did orientation go? Did orientation prepare you to learn? How did your onboarding go? Did your onboarding prepare you to make an impact in the organization? Is this what you thought it was? If not, why not? And ensuring that you can get that data, have the clear and transparent conversations on it, that is going to allow you to move the needle forward on ensuring individuals are engaged. And why is engagement so important? Because that engagement has individuals at the want to curve. They want to work. They're not just there for a paycheck. They're there because they want to be. The more folks we can get to that want to curve in the organization, the more likely they are to feel that they belong, to feel that they're doing meaningful work. And if we've designed the organizations right, they're focused and they can see exactly what they need to do, which means they're not necessarily overwhelmed because they can celebrate what those key successes are. So, but when we understand, hey, I feel like there's too much, I feel overwhelmed, we can then address those things, right? So when we're diagnosing items in the organization, there's, like I said, there's a couple key areas that we're going to follow based on the employee life cycle. One is at the very beginning, before they come in, during their orientation and onboarding period. And then we're going to specifically look at that typically on an annual basis. So we can call them, some organizations call them climate surveys. We want to see what the climate looks like. Now, the tool that we use for climate surveys, this actually has heat maps on it. So we can see who in the organization is doing really, really well in this area and who's not. The goal here is to be transparent because we can all grow, right? And when we understand how we can grow, we can also, as leaders, grow within that, but we're listening to what folks are saying. So we're going to go back and we're going to make some small tweaks, one thing at a time. Remember, we want to make a 1% change, which is going to be significant over time. When we make those 1% changes, we're going to do some pulse surveys, 1 or 2 questions. It's not going to be the same in every department of the organization. It's going to be specifically laser focused based on what the team said in that specific area, reporting to that specific manager, because we're going to focus on one thing at a time for each team, right? And that's going to tell us, is what we're doing moving the needle? Or do we need to try a different lever? But we don't want to move too fast. Otherwise, we don't get to see the impact of the changes that we're making. So the next area, so we're going to do surveys before individuals come in, during orientation and onboarding, on an annual basis, which is our climate survey or our culture survey essentially. And then we're going to do pulse surveys in between those to see, hey, here's what we're going to focus on. How are we moving the needle on it? The next one that I love to do is something called stay interviews. And these are hyper-focused on our top performers. And these are asking them why they stay. Why are you a top performer? Why do you stay? What does your manager do that's amazing? How, are you a great fit for this job? Where do you want to go in the future? How's the organization doing to really serve you? When we can understand those things, we can start applying it across the rest of the organization. But if we don't understand what the right things are, we have a tendency to focus on the wrong things, which leads us to move in the wrong direction. And then the last one is the exit interview. Now, exit interviews can be incredibly powerful. Yet, the thing we want to look at with exit interviews is two key items. These are individuals that are leaving, right? So, which that means is typically they have something negative to say, right? So, you want to take that into context. They've also made the decision to leave, which means we don't have the ability to change their mind. However, we have the ability to keep the door open if they want to boomerang back to us, right? And back in episode 74, we talked about the survey done through the Workforce Institute of UKG, which talked about boomerang employees, and it talked about why people are leaving, right? And if we can keep that door open for folks about why they left and the fact that we want them back and what that means for them to come back, they're more likely to come back if that's something that you're looking at right now. So when we're diagnosing what's going well and what's not going well inside of our organization, we want to make sure, one, that we're asking the questions that really matter. Two, that we're creating an environment of trust, because if our employees don't trust that we're going to do the right thing with the data, they're not going to give us honest information. And we typically want a 65% response rate because that shows the validity of the studies that we're doing. And then third is we have to follow through on what the feedback is in that study and share that study or those surveys transparently. If we don't share it, what happens is we lose trust with the individuals that have taken it and spent the time on it. So with that being said, we have quickly covered what Diagnose is and how you can diagnose different stages in your organization. We have something super exciting for you. We have a program. It's 4 weeks. There's different lessons where we actually go through each of these diagnose areas, how to ask questions. There's sample survey tools in there and some of the tools that we use that has some amazing benchmarks in it as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, like I said, we have a course on how to do this inside your organization that is available, and you can see a link below. And we also have a tool we use called Predictive Index that has some amazing tools in it specifically related to annual climate surveys. So with that being said, a key takeaway for executives listening in today is make sure you ask the questions, right? And a key takeaway for HR listening in is ensure that you have a way to analyze that data and follow through on it, because that follow through is going to build trust in the organization. So with that, I wish you an amazing week, and I can't wait to have you listen in next week as we continue to talk about how we diagnose items inside of our organization. And we have Andrew Bartlow with us next week. So thanks so much for being with us, and we hope you have a great week.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Talent Optimization Podcast. You'll find more tools and resources for CEOs and HR professionals looking to bridge the strategies versus implementation gap of talent optimization at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. We've also created a free, valuable resource for you to begin bridging the gap called the Talent Optimization Foundation Membership Program. You can access it for free at elevatedtalentconsulting.com/foundation. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode to learn more about talent optimization and creating a dream team for your organization.